I said, May is here, the housekeeper. He goes, I thought she was coming on Mondays. I said, she started today. He goes, oh, tell her, don't make my bed. I like it messy. I said, she's cute. I'll let you do it. I'm such a bad mom.
Funny. It's great. Okay, it says I'm live. Okay, we are live. I see
Okay.
us. So if you want to go ahead and share to your wall. I don't see the title here. Let me check that. Okay.
Share. Okay. I think we're, yeah, there we go.
Want to go ahead and put it in the portal? Okay.
Okay, sweet. I think we're good. And I don't know if I can see, I'll try to leave
Go
this up so
back
I can
in.
see comments and see if that'll.
Okay, yep, and I'll have my phone right here. Okay, welcome everyone. We're getting all of our technology ready to talk with you. I am going to watch comments as well. And I'll have my phone. Oh gosh, let me turn that down. Hi, Andrea. I see you watching with us. And anyone who's watching, feel free to comment or ask questions. We'll see you. So welcome. We have been pretty deep in just being with the goddess icon, and that is God and goddess in the iconic bonding grid. And we are noticing, certainly some of this is known, but we're going to bring it more into really conscious presence. What we're seeing is happening in the level of viral programs that are running in the system, have been part of the upbringing, the religious programming, tribal programming, cultural programming, you name it. The old way of even doing marriage and relationship. And so Michelle and I have been speaking about this specifically in the God Goddess icon. Part of the iconic bonding process is preparing the surfaces for bonding. We've talked a little bit about this previously. We're not going to get into detail with it right here. It's on our previous videos. However, there are 4 icons, and each of those icons, the human, the God Goddess, the master, and the alien, each of those has specific coding, and in coming into charging each of those, the surface, and Michelle, you may have more to sort of say on this, the surface is prepared for bonding. The being in each of these 4 iconic energetic tones and literal physical tones is being prepared to connect at a deeply intimate level in every way possible. Do you have a little more to say on preparing the surfaces? Because I know that's kind of your area of expertise.
Nothing specific. We cover that in the course. However, it's just that each one of them has specific ways that they come alive, become charged, calibrate, and each one of them needs personal attention to attune, and it's going to be different for each person
Yes. Yes.
how that surface is prepped and made ready for bonding with self and others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one thing that has been really showing up is in these viral programs, the core fear of both the masculine and the feminine. And a lot of our work so far has been with men. And so it's been showing up in different ways in different men that have come through the iconic bonding process. For men, and I remember this going back to the week before George asked me to marry him. what he said, he was in some turmoil. He was going to ask me that weekend, and instead he felt turmoil. And what he shared, this was 28 plus years ago, 29 years ago, was I just don't want to lose my identity.
Mm.
I don't want to lose who I am. And I was 20. I had no idea what he was talking about. He was 10 years older than me, had been previously married for a short bit of time. And so he had some understanding of what it meant and sometimes still means for a man who is moving deeper into intimacy with his chosen feminine. And that's fed by the woman whose fear is that he won't be able to hold, to embrace, to love all of who she is. And so her trigger word is abandonment. So his fear is that he's going to lose himself. He will be smothered. Her fear is that he can't receive, he can't accept, he can't love, he can't feel his devotion at the heart level for her because she's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were speaking about this morning, the too much in the feminine feels like it is born out of she has places in her through just experiencing life that are tender, that have been exposed and perhaps not responded to in a way that would have served her needs at the time. And so she has these layers that cover up. And when those layers cover up, she's essentially like this, covering herself. And she also, above that or beyond that, on the surface of that, is projecting that she's got it, that she's this independent woman. She can take care of herself. She's figured it out. She doesn't need a man because she can do it all herself. And that when she meets him, the him she desires, she'll just be way too much because she's done all of this. And so not only can he not handle her too muchness, the absolute truth beyond this and the expansion that covers it is that underneath her fear is that he can't handle her vulnerability, her tenderness, her need for intimacy, the potency of her love. Michelle, I feel like you have some things around that you would add to it.
The only thing that's really coming in for me is that the um, the stuff that she's covering herself with is what's in between the goddess true north that gets her off track to begin to magnetize towards things that are not her truth. So she takes steps and she does things that aren't truly in alignment with her deepest desires. And so even 2 degrees off is going to get you to another country, not where you want to go. It's in navigation, 2 degrees is significant. So even though if it's a little bit off, it's still, there's still stuff in the space between your true north and your magnetic north that has to be cleared out, cleaned out. That's a it's when you're going to bond surfaces, it's the sanding and getting out the stuff out of the way so that the surfaces can cleanly bond. I know for me, it's been things like grief, and also having to get to the point where I can tell the truth about myself with love and compassion. So I think part of what um, women bring sometimes is the victim, or they bring the woundedness, and so the coach or whoever will say, well, that needs to be healed before you can do this. Well, and sometimes it's really just, can you tell the story with compassion? And that in itself is a stripping away of the facade of independence.
Which many women have taken on because of the nature of where relationship has gone.
Mm-hmm.
When her heart space has not been met, whether that belongs to her or him, or usually both,
Mm-hmm.
when her heart space has not been met, then she is taking on, I will do it for myself then.
Right.
And in doing it for herself, the purity of her desire, of her longing, of the devotion she has to give is obsolete and has nowhere to go.
Right. She's cut off.
Yeah.
She's cut off from the depth of herself. Yeah.
And in that space you talk about of the compass, where if it's just a few degrees off, in the iconic bonding process, and because we're talking about the God goddess icon today, what lives in that space is the false god.
Right.
The illusions, the fantasies, and you mentioned the wounding. And by speaking about the wounding, what is known is that every human being who lives on this planet has some level of what we call wounding.
Mm-hmm.
In telling the story is not, these are all the horrible things that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
What you're referring to, and add to this if there's more, as I perceive it and as we've spoken about it, is that her story is her landscape, is herself. It's not what's happened to her. It's, I have experienced this as shared through an open heart that isn't protected, that isn't just doing it for herself, that is actually inviting and letting him in to see her in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Not as victim,
Mm-hmm.
as woman.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to shift over to him now. For him, what we keep seeing is the masculine has those layers of protection because for him, he doesn't want to lose himself. He has experienced historically, recently in relationship in our modern time, as I mentioned George talking about, the masculine fears that he also cannot be himself. It looks different in each of them. She's afraid of him seeing her. He fears that if he really sinks into the potency of love that exists in his heart for the feminine and lets her in, she's going to smother him.
Mm-hmm.
He can't breathe. He has no space.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that in the bond, in the alchemy of what becomes the bond, there is a dissolution of the two and the becoming one, so to speak. So the whole concept of holding on to your identity and holding on to yourself and all those things, I think there's a lot of fear for both around, oh well, if I let this go, or these things that you're bringing up as fears to keep me from having to go into that alchemical space of literally becoming one with the other person. That's keeps you up on the surface. It keeps you from going deep with yourself and with the other. So when you follow the fear and you speak the truth about that fear until you get to the edge of it, or you get to the bottom of fear. The actual, fear has a subject, anxiety does not. So it's what is the thing that you're afraid of? It's I'm going to discover that I'm not the person I thought I was, or I'm not or what I thought I wanted, I do not want. I want something else. And then there's this deepening of intimacy. So anything that somebody's throwing up as the resistance or the block or the thing that's in the way or the excuse, that's just the thing that's covering up the real object of the fear behind it.
And it feels like in each, the fear is the potency of being seen,
Mm-hmm.
being chosen,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing both on a giving end and a receiving end, the potency of what the true frequency of love is. Because we've known love in all those adornments. If you love me, you will XYZ. Because I love you, I give this. And in the way we've been doing relationships, that equals sacrifice. And I've heard people say over and over again, if you're going to be in relationship, you're going to have to work hard and you're going to have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Because when the surfaces, to use our language, are prepared for bonding, those adornments aren't needed. And as you go through the process of each icon, the human gets charged, the God sinks into that heart space, the master comes online, and the knowing is there. The alien lights up, and the genius codes, the true essence of your being comes online. All of that happens without these protections. Shedding, you said there's a dissolution. There is an absolute dissolution of the egoic part that keeps us separate so that the hearts can come together. The bond is one, and you're still yourself.
Yeah.
Your true self, your true north self is still fully present. And that is what bonds.
Mm-hmm. And so people might say, well, what about trauma? What about the things that happen being viewed through the trauma lens? So much about trauma um, is what remains when resilience is expended. So when you get to the end of your resilience see or resilient the quality of being resilient, then there's a it the pieces that are left unprocessed because you've run out of resilience is what we call trauma, or sometimes PTSD, or whatever we want to call it, whatever we want to name it. And so part of the iconic bonding process is increasing resiliency. It's building resilience in your human so that you can process through those things. And we are so capable, so we're so limitless, um, that the beauty of that system, this system that we have, this meat suit that we our being exists in, is that at every entry point we have the ability to create more capacity. And so in iconic bonding, that's what we talk about in the human, is how can we create so much resilience and so much capacity in the human, in the physical form, that processing the things that happen becomes, I'm going to use the word, a natural result of creating capacity. And so
Meaning you don't have to process as much. That's the natural result.
it's a shift in the processing. It's a different type of processing. So the ways that we have to cope with that right now are talk therapy or somatic therapies or all the different modalities and therapies. However, I always go back to what we're designed and created to be able to do when these things come in is let it pass through or maintain our our space in it. We don't collapse. So much of a trauma response is related to collapse. And when you expand in all the ways that the human can expand and create tensegrity, then the vibration and the flow or whatever of whatever's considered this event is able to move around, move through. It doesn't get stuck. You have this resiliency. I know that's not
And
super clear, but
it literally changes
yeah.
your appearance, your energy level. And we have a client we've been working with in the iconic bonding process. And interestingly, it's been men thus far, which fascinates me that so many men are showing up for this. And this man has been doing the primal charge for a month, less than a month.
Hardcore. Yeah.
Hardcore. Got on a call. He looks completely different. Even before he spoke to us, I was thinking it, Michelle said it, his whole countenance is changed. He looks alive. And this is a highly influential, very sharp, successful, mature man who just by charging his primal, just by his primal, also by tending to his heart space, and by tending to, there's no work involved. It's a level of awareness and noticing and listening and responding, being with, Michelle says, intimacy, bonding with himself. Looked completely different, spoke different. It was as though life force filled his being from the ground up, and all we could see was probably here to hear of him. Completely different man.
Yeah.
Completely different man. I would never have used the language of The Walking Dead about this man previously, but seeing him currently in comparison to what I knew before he did this, it's as though if I look back at the trajectory, it was The Walking Dead, and he's now filled with life force, and he's only begun the process. That is preparing the surface for bonding. So much. And when you are doing that, to Michelle's point, what we know as the trauma, and we all have it, we've all had it.
We've all had the experiences, right?
That's right. We've all experienced some level of trauma in our life. So that's across the board. The residual holding on to, even unconsciously, like the body tightens and constricts and holds on to that as protection to not experience it again. That begins to release from the system naturally, so that when a touch point, I'm not going to call it a trigger, because to me triggers are you completely collapse. When a touch point touches that place that used to hold tightly the residues of your trauma, when a touch point touches it and you're charged and your surface has been prepared and you're in the bonding process, it moves through you. Michelle said that, and it's true. It moves through you. You'll feel it. You'll feel the impact hit your system. You pause, you notice it, and you'll notice how you respond differently, and it begins to just fall away.
It doesn't stick.
It changes. It doesn't stick because there's no surface for it to stick to, which is why We prepare the surface for bonding, because if something's going to stick, you want it to be the bond,
right.
the intimacy, true intimacy, clean intimacy.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting because like more and more I see different coaches online saying, oh, women need to do their work, because I guess then in the collective there are women talking about men needing to do their work. And and so I've seen coaches calling out women, women need to do their work. And I think that's coming from the males saying, look, I don't want to hold your story, your victim laden emotional facade that keeps me from getting to your heart, to you, to the true you. And I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And yet, as women, one of the viruses that we run is that we don't know our bodies anymore. We've been stripped of that knowledge. The mother culture's dead, and I say this all the time when I teach: is the mother culture's dead. We do not have the ability to support each other in the ways that indigenous community did, before industrialization, pretty much, and then before that, civilization. Oops, sorry, you guys. That was my Thinkorswim. Market is closed on the East Coast, in case you were wondering.
Everybody up.
So, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. So, so she's got, she has to locate, she has to identify her facade and then dismantle that. And it's individual. And each icon kind of creates their own facade. And so whatever she's holding on to, she may have used to create or build this wall. That's the part that needs to be dismantled, destroyed, and created.
And one point that I want to insert here, that for me, when you just said that, it clicked. It's not his job to dismantle her wall, and it's not her job to heal him.
Right.
And if that's existing in the dynamic, that's not the iconic bond. That's a trauma bond.
Trauma bond. It's an entanglement.
Yes.
It's an entanglement.
Yes. And it's being in it. And I've seen a lot of women, and perhaps men, but in my work with women previously, a lot of women who have gotten caught in, I see his potential. And if we're together, my love is big enough to melt what he's holding on to. That's not really the truth. It's not about the size or potency of love that one brings the other, because in its purest essence, that love that exists in his heart and her heart is pure, and it exists for creation.
Right. That's not the job of love.
It's not the job of love. Love is about devotion and creation and intimacy and bringing in new life, just like we saw in our client who is experiencing a heart opening and visibly has new life. Like
this ain't fixer upper.
No, it's not.
On this episode of Fixer Upper, today's demo day. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. That's bullshit. It's not his
Today's
job.
demo day. He's going to break our wall down
Yeah, right.
today.
He comes in with the tight jeans on and no shirt and a sledgehammer, and everybody's excited. And no, that's not his job. You know,
No,
it's not.
no.
Yeah, it's not demo day. It's not his
And
job.
when she comes in expecting him to do that job,
Yeah, no,
even unconsciously, or if she comes in with the expectation that she's going to become the demo on his stuff,
yeah, she's not showing up to prove that he's still got his freedom. No, that's not her
that's
job either.
it's bondage. It's
Right.
literal
It's
bondage
yeah.
instead of bonding. Hi, Julie
And we
Hutchins.
talked
I
about what happened.
fucking love you.
And we talked about what happens. Oh, I love you too. So that we talked about that's what happens is if he goes into it proving that he's still got his freedom, immediately his energy goes this way instead of down and deep because he's too busy proving that he's still got his freedom. So then you're talking about non-monogamy, energetic, physical, energetic non-monogamy. Then you're talking about, you know, behavior that is not going to deepen the bond and create more intimacy. He's still proving he's got his freedom because he's so afraid he's going to lose his freedom. And then it's like, oh my God. And then she's like, now she's got to, you know, pick up the sledgehammer or either give him or she's not doing it if she's not giving him this freedom. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is now we're dealing with this is a move away from strategy, not a move toward strategy. So they're moving away from the things that they don't want to be rather than moving toward the things that they want to be. It is always a bad idea to have a move away from strategy. You always need to move toward what you want, not away from what you don't want. And so immediately this bond is set up to debond because they're moving away from what they don't want instead of facing and moving toward what they do want. Even if you're facing, even if you're moving toward what you want and you're still looking at what you don't want, you're not going to get there because you have to turn around and face what you want and put your back to what you don't want. It sounds so simple. It's like driving the car in reverse. It's like, or driving, looking in the rear view mirror and no, you got to flip it around. And this sounds so elementary, but yet so many relationships are based on what we're trying not to have happen. And immediately you're caught in a cycle of backing away from what you don't want and you're still looking at it.
And it is elementary. When you say it sounds elementary, it's probably something that anybody listening, you've heard or you have it in your awareness. However, it doesn't just exist here. It exists in the tiniest little nuance. Mm-hmm. And that's what iconic bonding is. Iconic bonding isn't come in and heal your trauma. We'll move you through all the processes. Iconic bonding is you've done that. However you do it doesn't mean I'm fully healed and perfect and I have nothing. It means I'm present in myself. I'm ready to show up and be present in and as myself and move through this process. And when you do, those little nuances that are those couple of degrees that Michelle talked about between true north and that magnetic north, which can be so close, mm-hmm. Those nuances dissolve and you become fully aligned, heart open, surfaces prepared, and you will know your bonded partner when they arrive. Because the back and forth, the push and pull, the coming in close, pulling away between masculine and feminine, her needing him feeling suffocated and backing up, it doesn't exist there. The surfaces have been prepared and each partner, even if there are still pieces that move and fall away, is showing up saying, I want it. Mm. And I know I want it and I'm here for it. So bring it on.
Yeah.
That's a different energetic. Mm-hmm. Totally. And it touches the teeniest little nuance and fine tunes it.
I'm just looking at comments here.
Yeah, see if there's any.
Yeah, totally. It is a refining. Yeah, it's a total refining. It's so, you know, these are the things that when I know, Jacqueline, you have a different awareness because you are partnered and married, and yet in the process of creating the deeper the deepening of the iconic bond, so to speak, the strengthening of the iconic bond. And then on a single representation who's preparing the surfaces and intimately bonding with self. And I guess from the single perspective is for women who have been through what the world would call a lot. Um, there's the and we've all seen the meme where being strong is a trauma response, or strong is a nervous system response, and that's true to a certain extent. However, there's nothing wrong with being strong. It's that if strong is a facade for what hasn't been pulled through the body with the story, then that's the problem is the facade, not the strength.
Yeah, I think that's strong in the feminine. And hello to Kevin. He said hello to both of us. Strong in the feminine in recent times has come, and independent, both of those words have come to symbolize, I don't need anything. I don't need a man. I've got this myself. And there is a place for feminine strength of spirit, of energy, her ability to get through when she really has needed to or may need to, and her independent spirit that isn't going to collapse into needing him to rescue her every time she feels something uncomfortable. Those two examples to me of strong and independent are the protective ones. Underneath of that is a woman who can navigate this world independently, doesn't need him to constantly make every choice for her or tell her what to do or make her okay every time something happens. A woman who can hold herself. What we've lost is the woman who can do that and has developed her strength and can own, I also want and need a man. I also want and need his covering. I also want and need his protection. I also especially want and need his leadership.
Yeah.
In that place, feminine strength is translated into the potency of her devotion. Her ability to recognize where, out of strength, she's resistant to his leadership, because I can do it myself. And I, even though I'm in this bond with George and want his leadership, need his leadership, choose his leadership and his strength, there are still times that I catch myself falling back into our old program, my viral program that has tiny little residues of fine, I'll do it myself. That energy and response in the feminine is born out of the old programming. And actually underneath has a little bit of fuck him. Fuck him. He can't see me. He doesn't get me. He has no idea. And while absolutely there are true experiences of that, you and I have both had a true experience of being in relationship with a man who could not see us.
Yeah.
Born out of that for both of us was a strength and an independence to take care of ourselves. And it's coming has come and is coming full circle to, okay, along with that strength and independence has to be an intimacy with self.
Yeah.
The question I would ask a woman who sits in front of me and says, he doesn't see me, compassionately, I would say to her, do you see me?
Yeah. Do you see yourself?
And
do
how do you
see,
feel about her?
yeah, and do you see yourself with compassion for what you've
Yes.
experienced, and yet it's your story and it's not your story. It's a story, and you're compassionate about that story, not passionate about that story.
Right, right. True north, magnetic north. True north, magnetic north. Compassionate, passionate.
Mm-hmm.
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
It makes me think of there's a song, and I can't remember the name of it, but years ago when I watched Grey's Anatomy, the song was on Grey's Anatomy, and it stayed with me. And it was about the lines on my face tell you the stories of where I've been.
Yeah.
That is the feminine story in its potency.
Right.
She's allowing all her stretch marks, her lines, and I'm not just talking physically, I'm using that as an example. It's her story. She's not covering it, feeling shame about it. She's not talking from a wounded place of, look how wrinkled I am, look how old I'm getting, look what happened to my belly from having babies. It's not that. It's, this is my woman.
Yeah.
And she loves her, and she sees her just as you or I would with our daughters. We're never going to tell our daughters, man, you're getting old. You put some weight on. You're not looking so great.
Yeah, we would
Come
tell
on over here, love.
Yeah. And yeah, we would tell ourselves that.
We would talk to ourselves that way.
Yeah.
In our lineage, that has been true. And you and I have talked about this, and I imagine women listening get it, which is we are flipping that.
Oh, yeah.
We are flipping it. And instead, feminine devotion is felt with and for herself first.
Right. Well, it's like one of the things that I recommend that people do in working with their human to build resiliency, so that your brain knows that your body has your you have your own back, and your brain knows it, is the practice of global bowspring. So and I teach a class on Monday and Wednesday along with Amanda Cepeda, and you can get the link off that my page or my business page, My Oh Wild. And that's what that whole practice does. It's a great class. And it really brings you into these parts of your body that have not moved, or you're discovering, and the nuances of places that awaken, and also how you hold your body in space and what that does to your awareness, and also just the strength with which you are now able to, how you're able to move differently, and the power and the potency of that. And that's one of the things that when I'm working with clients, that I recommend, is that I don't recommend it, it's actually pretty much a requirement, is that you've got to learn to be soft and strong. You have to learn to open and hold, and open the vulnerable spaces, the pelvic floor, the belly, the throat, all the places we would shut down and guard in a trauma response, or an elevated nervous system response, to be able to open them and hold them and breathe while all this is happening around you, maybe even to you, maybe even through you, whatever. You've still got your integrous frame, and you still possess tension plus integrity, tensegrity. And so it's a very key component of building the resiliency that it takes to pull the story through with compassion and regulate, neuroregulate. It's a big deal.
Really big deal.
Oh yeah, it's a really big deal. So we started off talking about
Yeah.
the viruses, the viral coding and the viruses that run. And remember that the viruses create the software hardware mismatch.
Right.
They create the mismatch. And so creating the match is to deprogram the virus. So deprogramming the virus needs codes. So, and that's why we created the iconic bond, was so that there's a program, literal codes wrapped into a bundle called a program, to help rewrite virus elimination program to eliminate the viruses that are running in the system, so that you're not in there on an episode of Fixer Upper or singing it with your sledgehammer, expecting that you're going to create a relationship and a bond. Even though those shows are lots of fun and the results are usually really good, that's not what relationship's about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I love that piece that you just brought in about the coding, and the program is created to release those viral programs. Those viral, yeah, I thought maybe those viral programs that are running. And I want to say that the coding that's in our program, and that is coding, CODING, the codes, is birthed out of Michelle and I, but the program is specifically designed to activate your codes. We're not giving you our codes. We're not coding you. It's none of that. It's for you to come in and move through the process your system needs for your codes. It activates your codes, prepares your surface for bonding. And it's templated, but it's also highly customized for each person. I want to say hello to Eddie, who said hi, and Andrea said, when you're really in your power, you know you don't have to prove anything, including your value. You establish it within you. You just are it. And specifically relevant to iconic bonding, what we have put together, are putting together, doesn't require you to work into knowing your own value.
Right.
And this is what we saw with our male client. He didn't work to know his value, nor did he establish it within. He focused on, with Michelle's guidance, the human and what was needed for tensegrity. I'm going to say the word.
Mm-hmm.
And that shifted. He opened his heart, or became aware of space in his heart that had been protected, closed down. And between even just the two of those, never mind the other two icons, we haven't even gotten to those yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just the two of those, his value, his connection and intimacy with himself, which really ultimately is the value, multiplied.
Yeah, priceless.
Multiplied.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Okay, I got to bounce.
Me too. That's what I got. Thanks, everybody.
We both got our masculines in the field needing
We do. We do. I got to go to him. So.
Okay. All right. See you later.
Bye.